Good morning. We're not using a speaker today, so if you want to move a little closer so that you can hear us, but thank you very much for coming. We welcome you to today's 9/11 ceremony where we remember all the victims that perished, those who rushed to help, and those who sacrificed their lives. We'd like to have the members of the state delegation and the fire and police commissioners lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. This is the big flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to ask Reverend Dr. Alita Ward from the Greenfield Hill Congregational Church to lead us in the opening prayer, please.
The words of Psalm 90. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in every generation. Let us pray. 21 years, Lord, 21 years. We come before you, the God who is our dwelling place in every generation, and we acknowledge with sorrow and stunned hearts that a generation has arisen since that day. A generation of years has passed since that day when our hearts were broken by unfathomable loss. A generation, Lord, has grown up without the memories that so many of us carry, memories that to us seem like yesterday. These are the memories we carry, memories of that day's trauma and that night's tears. We carry memories of the thousands lost, and among those thousands, those whose names were known to us, whom we whisper to you now. Memories of the ones we saw run toward the towers, firefighters who gave their lives, 343. Law enforcement officers who sacrificed theirs, 71. And the hundreds of others who rushed to serve without measure. Memories of that blue-skied, sunlit day of horror a generation ago. So, dear God, let this generation speak the stories to the next. Let the memories be shared in words of grief and of respect. Let the names be known forever. But most of all, let generations now and yet to come see in us that same pride in service and love of others that today we are honoring. Let our faith in you be as evident as your faithfulness to us, generation to generation to generation. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. I'd like to recognize the members and retired members of service here. Please raise your hands. Our elected officials, members of the Police and Fire Commission, fellow town employees, members of the town commissions and RTM, members of the public, and as always, the members of Station 1 for their hospitality. I'd like to ask Fire Chief Dennis McCarthy to come up for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Never forget. First, let us never forget that during the September 11th attacks in 2001, 2,977 people were killed, and more than 6,000 others were injured. The immediate deaths included 265 on 4 planes, 2,606 in the World Trade Center and in the surrounding area, and 125 at the Pentagon. Most of those who perished were civilians, but there were also 343 firefighters, 71 law enforcement officers who died at the World Trade Center. Another law enforcement officer died when United Flight Airlines Flight 93 crashed into the field at Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and 55 military personnel perished at the Pentagon. Let us never forget those responders who rushed in while others rushed out. We remember the heroism of FDNY firefighters from across the city, across the tri-state region, and from across the country, including Fairfield firefighters who took part in the mission to rescue and support. They rushed to Ground Zero to be part of the mission. Responders were assigned tasks of bucket brigades. They were directed to the pile of debris to search areas outlined in orange paint where cadaver dogs had identified human remains. They followed our solemn oath to leave no comrade behind. Many of them suffered, and too many have died from 9/11 related cancers. What makes 9/11 such an extraordinary crisis was that it did and continues to represent what this country is capable of. Everyone across the country pitched in. Americans sought ways to help one another. From simple neighborhood fundraising to business and corporations sending socks, boots, gloves, and food in support of the rescue effort. The need to contribute to the national effort are lasting memories that depict the best of the American character. Hundreds of thousands demonstrated their capacity for compassion, and as a nation, we're proud of this unique American quality. Those selfless actions and the lessons learned are deeply embedded in our psyche, and they match the American spirit that was so well displayed from challenges from the Revolution to World War II to the national disasters since. We remember this because this is who we strive to be. Our remembrances must also include the innocent families so tragically disrupted. Tragic phone calls of love and goodbyes haunt our memories from the days that followed the 9/11 tragedy. The unimaginable emotional trauma endured is overwhelming. We owe it to them to include their loss in our memorials. We can never fully appreciate the pain that they endured or how tortured their path was to go on and how it continues to be. So let me leave you with this thought. Someone is in pain today. They are hurting, and you may not know why. Be kind. Be compassionate. Show empathy. Smile and hug them. Be quick to listen and not to judge. You could be the one to change it all around for them today. You could be the one to save their life. That is who we want to be, and why we must never forget the power of 9/11 and its message. We, each of us individually and as a community, has the capacity to show compassion to our neighbors and strangers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to ask Chief Robert Calamaris from the Police Department to say some words.
Thanks, Chief. Good morning, everyone. Today we honor the lives lost and sacrifices made on this tragic day 21 years ago. It never gets easier, no matter how much time has passed. September 11th, 2001 is a day that will always be known for its infamy, as it is a grim reminder of what was lost and forever changed. However, the day also marks a time in which Americans rallied together in support of one another. That same support has been seen and felt over the past 21 years as the country continues to pay tribute to the victims and the first responders each year, as well as the families that they left behind. As first responders, a day like 9/11 is particularly poignant and holds a special place in our heart as we honor the sacrifice that so many of our brothers and sisters made that day. With close proximity of the World Trade Centers to our community, many of us knew people who were at Ground Zero at the time of the attacks, or who responded to assist in the wake of the attacks. It is our duty to those forever impacted by the devastating events that took place that day to never forget the victims of the attacks and the heroic work and sacrifices of the fallen police officers, firefighters, emergency medical personnel, and family members of our military. On the anniversary of this day, ceremonies such as this are an important way for us to ensure that the impacts of that day and what was lost are never forgotten. Even amongst our youngest generations that may have not been born yet, or were too young to remember the day as vividly as some of us do, these ceremonies allow us to share the stories of first responders, victims, and survivors alike. Stories of how we come together as a country in spite of the efforts of those who sought to drive us apart. Today we stand in solidarity, in remembrance, and reflection. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Please welcome First Select Woman Brenda Kupchik.
So I don't have any prepared remarks, and I never usually do. Why do we come here every year on 9/11? Why does our community come together? Why does the fire department, the police department, our first responders, why do we all come together on 9/11? I think we come together because this was one of the most significant acts of an attack on our country, and I think in our country's history. As the chief mentioned, more civilians died at Ground Zero than any other attack on our homeland. It was terrifying for every single American as we watched that attack happen on our homeland. A couple weeks ago, my husband and I decided, instead of taking a beach vacation, that we would go to New York City for the weekend and actually visit the 9/11 Memorial and the museum, something I actually wasn't looking forward to, because I knew that it would bring up so much pain and sorrow for each of us. But I thought it was important, and I was glad that we went. And if you haven't gone there yet, I would encourage you to do so, because what can I say? It was heartbreaking and hurtful to be there, but also it felt like I was honoring every single person, every American, first responder and civilian, who died during that attack, and that I was honoring them by being there. And so today we gather again on the 21st year to honor those who lost their lives and to never, ever forget what happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Please welcome State Senator Tony Hwang.
I want to begin by thanking all of you out there that made the conscious effort to come and honor this day. Thank you very much for remembering. I think it's important for us to remember. 21 years can ebb and lose the memory of the feelings that we all felt that day. But it is important for us to never, ever forget that emotion. 9/11 is our generation's Pearl Harbor. It is a day in infamy, and it is a day of solemn sorrow and respect for what we lost. Those people who lost loved ones, who will never see their loved ones on birthdays and holidays and special occasions, to see their smile and a hug of affection. This is a day to honor them. But it is also a day that America lost its innocence. We lost a sense of safety. So much has changed since 9/11, 2001. For those of us that lived through that day, I don't need to share that emotion with you. You know it. But this ceremony is important because we now have an entire generation of community and people that don't remember the raw emotion that we felt. It is important for us to share, to remind them the raw emotion of fear and loss that we experienced, to make them understand it's not just in the books and in the TVs that we see in the memorials, but the true raw emotion of knowing that you have lost loved ones, that you were so grateful that your loved ones returned home. On that day, we saw the worst, the most evil of mankind. And people can remember that. But I ask for all of us to remember in the days afterwards that we saw the best of humanity. We saw people coming together. And I think in this time and age, that is more important than ever. It is important for us to remember that America's resolve and resiliency was on full display. I was at Park Palooza yesterday in the Strathfield Village area yesterday, and it is reminded that 9/11 did not change America. America reacted, and with resounding defeat of terrorism, said, we will live the American way. You will not scare us into defeat. And I think what this memorial and this memory does is remind us that America united is stronger than ever. Divided, we will fall. I want to close by acknowledging our heroes, the first responders, our military, the average citizen that made deeds large and small that made a difference in people's lives. They're the unsung heroes that do not get the acknowledgement. So I, as a state official, I hope along in acknowledging Representative McCarthy-Vahey, Representative Leeper, Representative Devlin, from the state of Connecticut, we thank all of you for your contributions. And God bless America.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. I'd like to acknowledge the members of our brother-sister service, AMR, for their great work. I'd like to acknowledge Local 1426 President. I'd like to, Bill Tuttle. I'd like to acknowledge members of the police department. Chief. Firefighter Mo Jaradovic will come over to the bell, and she will represent the final alarm. Thank you for sharing your day with us. This concludes today's program. Please join us for refreshments in the rear of the firehouse, and be safe and never forget.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Like me, I once was lost, but now